Hello and welcome to our Energy Connect studio at COP28. I'm delighted to be joined with me today by Tim Figures, Associate Director at Boston Consulting Group. Tim, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Now we're here on day 5 of COP28. How's COP gone for you so far? And what's the importance of it's Climate Finance Day, isn't it, at COP today?
Yeah, well, it's been a great few days here at COP, and today, as well as finance and gender, it's actually the first time trade has been on the agenda for a COP, and that's very exciting for me as someone who works on trade and climate change most of the time.
Absolutely. And on that point about trade, what is the current state of implementation of climate-related, trade measures, especially when it comes to sort of supply chains, which seems to be a lot of the bottlenecks?
Yes, well, we're still at a very early stage. The trade and climate agendas are coming closer together, but this is the first time that we've been at a COP discussing this linkage. And really what's prompted that is the measures taken or starting to be taken by some developed markets to try and decarbonise their supply chains.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to touch on one of those, specifically the EU and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which went live in October, I think. What's the importance of this model, and could it be brought to other regions or geographies, or is that one of the the things that sort of needs to be done, sort of bring implementations of other areas?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things people have been discussing here in Dubai today. So the EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM for short, started its compliance phase on the 1st of October.
Right.
The actual levy comes into force in 2026, and we're seeing quite a lot of other countries expressing interest in maybe doing something similar. And while on the one hand, this is a welcome incentive to decarbonize supply chains globally, it does run the risk of fragmenting the global trading system if we get a lot of these different schemes all operating on a slightly different basis.
Yes, and with decarbonisation on a lot of people's agenda, is it possible without adopting a global trade approach?
Well, I think we need global trade in order to decarbonise, because we rely on the global trading system maybe for trading things like green energy or critical raw minerals or goods and services.
Yeah.
But equally, the global trading system at the moment is a significant cause of CO2 emissions. So we need to bring both those agendas together and make sure we use the global trading system for good to deliver the net zero world that people around us today are committing to.
Yeah, and then going back to being here in Dubai for COP28 UAE, the importance of having a day allocated to trade, but also bringing everyone together from all end users. How important is that to have it sort of discussed and looked at and talk over the issues?
So I think it's really important to see the various actors coming together here, and similar debates will start to happen in Geneva in the World Trade Organization. I think both forums need to work much more closely together to make sure that we can maintain an open, market-based, fair and competitive global trading system, but do so in a way that supports decarbonisation.
Yeah, and what advice would you have for businesses or governments, to adopt what should they adopt to boost climate competitiveness?
So this concept of climate competitiveness, or carbon competitiveness, we sometimes call it, I think is one that all companies and all markets, whether developed or emerging, need to consider. Because as the world starts to look much more closely at the carbon that's traded, particularly within goods, then if you are selling high carbon, high energy intensive goods on global markets, actually increasingly those goods will become uncompetitive. And so it ought really to be a spur to diversify and to decarbonize, to ensure that parts of the world like this region that have historically exported natural resources or energy intensive products can remain competitive into the decades ahead.
Absolutely, Tim. And just before we go, sounds like you've got a busy couple of days ahead at COP. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for watching, and I look forward to bringing you more studio interviews from COP28 in the coming days.